Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video based on the blog post I just published today, the 24th of March, 2025, about the top 13 tropes I absolutely hate in books because 13 is one of my lucky numbers. I was going to do 11, which is my number one lucky number, but I figured, I can think of 13 total, so just, why not go with it? And of course, feel free to leave me a comment down below letting me know, are there any other tropes you guys absolutely hate that I did not mention? Which is your own least favorite trope I mentioned? Do you actually like any of these tropes? Have you ever seen them positively transformed into a totally, different angle? Whether you're a reader or a writer yourself, maybe you've done it. And full disclosure, I have before I knew better, of course, used some of these myself, but I like to think I transformed them into much more original, instead of just, I'm just lazily doing 4 girls in a row and then a single boy in the family, or well, I'm going to get to number 1, the trope I most hate. But anyway, I do like to think I have put an original angle on these things, and I have learned my lesson from some of them. I'm not using them any more, but we live and learn as we go through the writing journey. And of course, this is one of those videos with crossover appeal for both BookTube and AuthorTube. So anyway, while I have a previous post and a video based on that about gimmicks I dislike and what exactly makes a gimmick, most of those items are narrative choices, not specific tropes. For example, the story is a flashback, the unreliable narrator, the narrator dies at or near the end. I'll put a link to that video at the end of this one. I also have a post about romance tropes, half love, half hate, but that only goes into tropes in one particular genre, and I should probably make a video based on that eventually too. Number 1, Instalove. Say no more. Seriously, why is this still a thing, and why was it ever a thing? At most, it's insta-lust, or feeling an immediate super-rational connection. But you cannot truly love someone you just met. That takes a long time of truly getting to know that person, and seeing him or her in multiple situations, going through difficult times together, not just we want to knock boots because we're feeling totally tingly after all of one date, or I've never felt this strongly about someone, it must be my future spouse, or no matter what, I could never possibly meet anyone else I feel this way about. At least in old films, I can understand the rush towards the altar somewhat, given the time constraints. For example, if your film is only 80 minutes long, or a little bit over 2 hours at the longest, you can't really spend that much time slowly drawing it out and letting it languorously develop. No, you have to quickly establish the couple and their feeling hot for one another, and they want to get married. And of course, the impossibility of longer, more relaxed courtships, just casually dating for a while instead of feeling, we must need to get serious after all of 5 dates. Whoever heard of only dating for 6 months or a year? Whoa, that's scandalous. And of course, the impossibility of having sex outside of marriage without scandal in that era if you were caught. In a book, there's no excuse. You have more time to develop things. Number 2, a book written by the protagonist. Wow, I really am not fond of this one. This can work, particularly if the protagonist has been established as a writer oneself, but it usually feels lazy and overdone. I had a previous video about this on the Phyllis Reynolds Naylor her famous Alice series. And then the final book, Now I'll Tell You Everything, which I rated 2 stars, didn't like it for many reasons, but anyway, it comes out, Alice has been writing this story all along. Oh, wow, isn't that a surprise? It's just stupid. You can do it in other ways. For example, maybe the character is a writer and at one point sits down to write, his or her memoirs or something like that, or at the end, looking forward to, and I'm going now, he or she is going to write the story of these years. But when you dump it out, and by the way, this is all written by main character. I just really don't like that. Number 3, 3 or more sisters, followed by the so unexpected only boy who completes the family. And this is probably the one I have used the most in my own work. Very rarely do you see this the other way around. While I understand why many people want at least one of each, you should always, like, all my children are named, like, Janie deserves a sister and Bobby deserves a brother, or like one girl and one boy. That's been, promoted as the ideal family since like so many decades. And I'm just missing out if I only have like five girls or like four boys. But it sends a harmful, hurtful message that only having girls isn't good enough. And that daddy can't possibly feel complete as a man unless he has that golden male heir like, frickin' Henry VIII. So many parents of only girls get rude, sexist, and presumptuous comments from total strangers. For example, oh, three girls, poor daddy. Oh, don't worry, honey, you can still get it right eventually. You're like only 30. You've got plenty of years. Oh, I'm sorry. You must have been so disappointed. And a fourth girl. Oh, daddy must be so like sad. Oh, no boy to carry on the golden family name yet, because girls can't carry on family names apparently. Only men can, or just typical things like, oh, you'll get it right eventually. Oh, I'm sorry. This must be so difficult. Five girls and no boy. Oh, you're like 50. Oh, I guess you can't have another chance. Like you had seven girls. That must have been a huge failure and disappointment. And of course, if they have like, say, three girls, a boy and a girl, the inevitable, was the baby a mistake? You could have stopped after the boy. And this is a story I heard like many, many years ago, probably around 20 years at this point, on the behind the name message boards, some on the personal, chatter, like name specific message boards. This person, I guess, knew a family. I don't know, maybe that person was part of the family, but anyway, this couple had something like three or four girls, a boy, and then they had two girls who were twins. And this old woman comes up to them in public at the mall, and she she said it out loud, like, were these twins a mistake? I know the boy was needed, but like, wow, it's like, seriously, you don't get to judge how many children other people have and whether they must be automatically feeling so disappointed and sad and heartbroken and depressed because, oh no, so many girls in a row. Number 4. A character who conveniently travels to Poland for a paper-thin reason on the eve of World War II and finds him or herself trapped there. For example, Herman Wouk's The Winds of War, when Byron goes with his new love interest, Natalie, to Poland for a wedding in Natalie's family. Oh, there's no other reason for him to go there, and it's kind of also convenient. He's working as a research assistant to Natalie's uncle, Professor Jastrow, but just gonna pop him in there because I want a Poland storyline. It's totally impossible to have a totally separate cast of characters who would already have a normal reason to be in Poland or travel to Poland anyway right at that time, and eventually have them, link up with the very waspy Henrys who normally would probably not have any reason to interact with Jewish characters by the way they're written. It just seems too stupid and deus ex machina, and sorry, not sorry that, thank God, that was canceled. I'm shocked it was even renewed for a second season. The PBS series World on Fire, this dude is in Poland. World War II breaks out, and he splurge, spur of the moment, impulsively marries his Polish girlfriend, and he's going to bring her back to England, but she just jumps off the train and gives her little brother Jan to him. Oh, take care of him. I hated that show for so many reasons. It was crawling with historical inaccuracies, but that's a whole rant for another subject. But anyway, getting back to the main point. Or substitute any other conveniently timed trip to a place about to be plunged into world-altering events or a major transformation, say San Francisco in 1906 or 1966, Boston or maybe New York City, any other major American Revolutionary War setting city in 1776, China in 1949, or Iran in 1979, or you can substitute your own city and place when it's or country when it's everything's about to change soon. I understand the reasoning behind this. For example, a big hallmark of historical fiction is putting characters in situations they don't really understand, can't figure out, and they're not really wouldn't normally be there because it creates a lot of dramatic tension. But it just, you can do that without being gimmicky or plopping them in there for a reason that just doesn't feel like it actually naturally works with the existing character and the storyline, but like you can do it so much more realistically by having your character or characters go there for a solid reason and not right on the eve of a big event. So like say they move to like say like Paris for university like a year before the French Revolution breaks out, or 6 months or something, or they happen to be visiting like relatives in like St. Petersburg over the Christmas holiday of 1917. They're not just, oops, out of nowhere, I'm just totally moving to a place that's about to change, like, oh, like a week or a couple of days before that big event. It just sounds freaking stupid. Or, well, I could rant so much about this. Number 5, immigrants only settling on the Lower East Side or elsewhere in Manhattan. Or like sometimes they'll be generous and be a little more creative and do the immigrants in Brooklyn, but still that's kind of cliche and overdone. Well, there's of course much truth behind this trope and cliche. It's just not uniformly accurate. Some of my ancestors came through Philly in the 18th century, long before there was an Ellis Island, and settled in Pennsylvania. One ancestor came to the colony of Virginia in the 17th century and later moved to Baltimore, and my ancestors eventually ended up in Pennsylvania. And none of my ancestors who came in the late 19th or early 20th centuries settled in New York City. Like they went right on to Pennsylvania, and one branch of the family, my Italian ancestors, they decided New York City isn't for us. It's too crowded. We went to farm, and so they moved to upstate New York. There were large ethnic enclaves of immigrants in so many other cities. I could name several dozen, Pittsburgh, where some of my family lived, like Minneapolis, Chicago, Milwaukee, Denver, Omaha, San Francisco, like any old East Coast city, any big city in the Midwest, even like New Orleans or Charleston, Atlanta. Just use your imagination. It's not like, oh, New York City is the only place anyone ever lived. Then if that's the case, why have there ever been any other cities in the US if New York is the only city worth living in, or the only city where anyone would ever possibly want to settle down and live in long term after immigrating? And some people went to Canada, Australia, Latin America, or other countries in Europe. For example, Maisie Moscow's wonderful family saga, Almonds and Raisins, or it might be called Raisins and Almonds. I always forget which word comes first. But they moved to Manchester, England in 1905, and it follows 2 families who eventually get linked up through marriage. There's an Austrian Jewish family. They're I guess more secular assimilated, and then there's the Sandbergs from Russia, and they're the very religious Orthodox family, and the culture clashes that inevitably come up from this unusual denominational friendship over the years. But anyway, you do not have to feel limited to New York City just because that's the only thing you've ever heard about in most sources. Number 6, the long-lost rich relative coming to save the day for a rags to riches deus ex machina ending. This is such lazy, childish writing. Number 7, the entire cast, or a good chunk of it, up and moving together. Well, there are specific situations where this is plausible. For example, immigration is a big one. Friends moving to suburbia after World War II, a show of survivors starting new lives together. I have a previous blog post on this. I should like to turn it into a video at some point. But anyway, many times it just feels like a poorly executed gimmick. Why does the entire cast need to move together at this particular moment? Maybe it actually does make sense that, that at a specific time in that, family's story, or that circle of friends, okay, but you can make it more original and not feel like a gimmick and trope if they don't all live in the exact same place. So, maybe they decide, oh, there's more job opportunities in this city, like our farming village or our small town. There's just not a lot of opportunities anymore, and we miss the friends and the bigger connections we had over there. I want to go back to school, and that has a much larger, better university, whatever reason. So, okay, some of them might live in one neighborhood, the others in a different neighborhood, or maybe some of them live in a completely different borough of New York City, or if it's whatever city it is, maybe some of them just live in different cities in the general area instead of plumping them all onto the same street or in the same apartment. So just be original. Number 8. This is one of the ones I hate most. It was all a dream or fantasy. Wow, I hate this. Why do so many writers keep doing this? It feels like a slap in the face after investing so much time and emotion in these characters and their stories. And the one that I hate the most, it makes me so angry almost 30 years later, the series finale of Roseanne when she reveals, oh, by the way, the last season, it never really happened. It was just a dream, a fantasy for a book I was writing, and these horrible things really happened to the family instead. Wow, that still leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. Like, how dare you? Like, after watching that show for so long and getting emotionally involved in those characters, and yes, it did kind of start jumping the shark as it got towards the end, but that was the biggest shark jump moment at all, like basically giving a huge middle finger to like longtime fans and viewers at the end by saying, oh, it didn't really happen, I just made it up. Number 9, the chosen one, seen most often in fantasy. I get this goes back thousands of years, like to mythology and folklore and the Bible and like, Arthurian legends and such like that. But more often than not, it just seems lazily chosen and poorly executed nowadays. Like, oh, I'm writing fantasy. Oh, I got to do the chosen one. Who could ever do anything different in a fantasy? And of course, this person is a total Mary Sue or Gary Stu. Number 10. Running with misunderstandings and just like building up and making them even worse, snowballing, based on snap judgments and refusing to let people explain the real story. Like would this really happen in real life? Why do you think this is clever? For example, assuming someone climbing through a window at night must be an intruder instead of the actual person who lives there and just, got locked out. Or that someone must be cheating because she or he was seen in public with a friend of the opposite sex. I know this is common in screwball comedies, which were very popular in the 30s and 40s, but I find it annoying instead of funny, like, nope, you can't explain. You're not going to explain anything. I know you must be automatically lying. You're going to jail now, or I'm putting your kids into custody because they said something I misinterpreted, or just so many stupid things. Or, oh, you must be cheating, or the business must be failing, or you must have feelings for someone else instead, just going to keep running with it and not letting you explain anything. You must be an automatic liar, and even though I know nothing about you and your situation, I know the truth. I'm going to base my snap superficial misjudgment of the situation. Ugh. Number 11, children wise and sophisticated beyond their years. That ain't how cognitive development works, and even the smartest, most mature child is still ultimately a child. Like these children, oh, I'm going to help you, daddykins and mommykins. I know so much about life already. I'm just this little Buddha at all of 6 years old, and this is also related to a trope I didn't mention specifically in this post. You've probably seen it so many times. The children, they know so much better than the actual grown-ass adults about, who they should be marrying and dating. Oh, I know you've been dating Jack for a long time, mommy, but oh, I think you should marry, Rob instead. He's cool and he's fun. He's not an old conservative fuddy duddy. Or, oh, I know you Janie, Dad, but I think you should go with Susie instead. She's cool. I just really think hanging out with her is fun. And oh, she's rich and she would give us such a fun, better life. You need to dump that person you have time invested with and you seriously are planning to marry, because at all of 13 years old, I know so much better about what makes a good long-term relationship. I hate that so much. Children know better than adults know. They freaking don't. Number 12, a cruel, nasty bully being forgiven because she or he is just hurting and misunderstood. This enrages me. Even worse when the bullied character feels compelled to help the bully and discovers his or her hidden humanity. Oh, this, Johnny is going to drown in the well. I've got to pull him up. Or, Susie's dog got lost and I helped the dog, and Susie was crying. Oh, she's just a sweet hurting child deep down, and she was insecure, and maybe her parents are getting divorced, and that's why she's bullying me. She didn't really mean to be cruel and abusive and give me CPTSD. It was like forces beyond her control. What an awful message to send to readers being bullied and bullying survivors. Most bullies do it because they're vile, mean-spirited people who enjoy hurting others, not because they have unresolved personal issues. Like, where did this narrative come from? Like, oh, the bullies only do it because they're insecure, or they have daddy or mommy issues or anything like that. Like, why are we giving them the benefit of the doubt? That's kind of gaslighting too, saying oh, I know you're being bullied, but think of the bully. You should be friends and forgive and forget. This just makes me so freaking enraged. I could do a whole separate video about that one. Number 13. I was saving the worst for last. Rape as character development. I shouldn't even need to say much more about this one. This one takes the absolute cake for worst trope of all time, and I see this in books and TV shows and movies, just you name it. Can you truly think of no other reason why a woman would be strong or want revenge or be, depressed or have some kind of haunted, traumatic past? This is related to another equally disgusting trope, women getting over rape instantly. Yeah. Oh, I'm instantly going to be bonded with the new boyfriend and we're going to have sex immediately. I don't have any PTSD. What's that? Kind of like a Beatrice Sparks book. She loved this trope over and over again. And I admit, this is one I've used in my own writing. For example, in my Russian historicals, Lyuba is, essayed by her father from childhood, and that has a lot of, impact, trauma on her over the years, why she keeps pushing away Ivan, the nice guy, and feeling like she only deserves a man who abuses her, who's not so nice. She understands what normal is supposed to look like, and she wants it to be in her own life, but she just doesn't understand how to make it happen for herself, and she only knows how to be abnormal. And this is a real thing that informs her personality and her character over much of the first book. It's not just oh, that's the reason she's traumatized. It's actually explored for pretty much everything, and it has lasting impact as well. And I have other characters who have been essayed, and again that informs them for a lifetime, seriously impacts their character. It's not just a lazy way to establish, oh, that's why she's so traumatized and frail and haunted. Oh, she's not like the other girls. That's why she's so angry and she wants revenge. You can do that in other ways, and if you are, unfortunately, it does happen so many times, women and girls getting essayed, and some men too, but almost always men get essayed by other men. Just take it in an original direction. Don't just dump it on the page as trauma, PORN. I guess that's the term they use for it. I could do a whole video on this. It just makes me angry that so many writers are still falling back on this as a lazy trope and trivializing essay. Thank you very much for watching all the way through to the end. As I said at the beginning, please feel free to leave me a comment down below letting me know what are your own least favorite tropes you've ever encountered in books. If whether you're a writer or a reader yourself, are there any you have used before you knew any better? Did you used to like some of these tropes or other tropes, and now you just hate them with the fire of a million suns, just anything like that? So thanks again for watching. I will see you very soon. Bye.